Welcome to Children's Pedcast. I'm Jimmy Bellamy, and this is a conversation about pediatrics with Children's Hospitals and Clinics of Minnesota. Today's episode, we are kicking off Child Life Week talking about med taking. Now, everyone has been through this on one end or the other of having difficulty taking medicine, and we have three child life specialists joining us today, Jeri Kayser, Sam Schackman, and Sarah Magnuson, who are wonderful child life specialists here at Children's. They're going to give us tips on what to do when you're dealing with a child that maybe is having a hard time taking medicine, both in the short term and long term. So stick around, enjoy the episode. There is lots to talk about, a lot of good nuggets that we went into, and some great advice that I even learned. I lots that I didn't know, and I've never claimed to know everything, but I was happy with all of the stuff that I learned in this episode. So sit back for the next half hour and enjoy the show. So we were talking about med taking. It's a big topic. A lot of parents, all parents, I think, eventually have to deal with med taking. I know I grew up in a house with four boys. My mom and dad, I don't know how they did it, but we had to take a lot of medicine. Fortunately, nothing was ever too serious or too long term, but there were things I didn't like to take. What do you do when a parent is maybe struggling to get a child to take medicine?
I think one of the things that I often hear is when a parent finds out that they need to go home with some medication, their first thought that will pop in their head is, oh, he's not going to take this. And so one of the things I think it's helpful to do right away is just our attitude. The more positive we feel about it, the more likely things are going to be successful. And if you think in terms instead of, he's not going to do it, but how can we maybe help him do it, that's a good way to start.
With medicine, if a lot of it is taken, I guess, orally, but if you're dealing with something like, say, diabetes, where you have to take insulin and it has to be on a regular basis, which I would say in most cases is daily, is there a point that a child gets to where he or she is already just okay with taking it, or is it going to be a constant struggle, or does it depend on the case?
I think most kids, it ends up being a routine for them if the parents can figure out a way to make a routine, maybe have the kid have some choice with what they're going to do during the medicine taking or the shot or the procedure, and maybe something they can do before or after, then it can become a routine for kids.
Are there any things you can do with a child who maybe can't verbally express his or her displeasure about taking medicine, or it's struggling? Like if you're like an infant, what would you do? What are some things you can do to make it easier for the child and for yourself as the parent?
That's actually a good point that you brought up infancy, because I think that's a good time to start in your parenting with your child, to have that positive attitude with the medicine. So with your baby, when they first take the medicine, it's likely they're going to respond to that taste in their mouth just because it's something different. And we want to be careful not to label that as yucky, but rather help even verbalize that for your infant to say, oh, this medicine's going to make your ear feel better. I'm glad you're swallowing it. Then you start to get into a habit as a parent on labeling the reason and the purpose for the medicine. So it's the focus is on that, not on so the focus is on a positive aspect of the medicine. And I think that's actually partly with what you're saying too. It depends a lot on where the child's at developmentally and what's the most supportive way to do, and what challenges they may face with each step of their development. Lots of kids do really well with taking their medicine, but this might change as they change. So as a parent, like with everything else we do, you have to adjust to it just as you would with any other aspect of your child.
When you're talking about making it positive, it's also equally important to be honest about it as well. A lot of people may think, oh, I'll put it in food. I won't let my child know that it's medicine, or that the medicine is being administered now. But how important is it to not do that and be honest?
It's very important to be honest about why the child needs to take the medicine. So talking about what the medicine's for, what it's going to help.
If it wasn't a grape chewable, I was not taking it. I always needed the grape chewable.
I think parents are coming from a place of wanting to make it easier for themselves and for the child. But I think by not being honest with the child, that breaches the trust that the child has in the parent. So being honest of why the child needs to take the medicine, what the medicine's job is, how it's going to help the child. And then also being honest with how you give the medicine. So not trying to hide it in food or candy or saying, oh, this is just candy. Being honest that it is medicine. It is going to help your body. And being honest with how that medicine is administered.
I have a nephew who's creeping in on 4, and he is in the phase of saying no to a lot of things. What are you dealing with, or what do you do when you are dealing with a toddler who is persistent at not wanting whatever he or she doesn't want and really isn't up for negotiating?
You totally nailed it, what it's like to be a toddler. The anthem of being a toddler is saying no, but it's not just saying no, they're seeking control. And that's, I think, probably one of the biggest challenges with med taking is because a child at that age who wants control can completely control their mouth. And even very young kids will figure that out right away, that they have this control. They can just close their lips. So as a parent, you want to make sure you're in a situation where the medicine is not what they're choosing to control. They can control other aspects of it, but not the medicine itself. That's non-negotiable, the medicine they're taking. But maybe they can choose if they sit in mom's lap or dad's lap. Maybe they can choose some other aspect of something they might want to take immediately after, if that's okay with the drug. They can choose something they want to do for fun when they're done. So when you shift a choice for the child to something that's you've already approved of, you're giving them a sense of control. At the same point, too, you're letting them know clearly that communication is clear, that the medicine is not up for choice.
You had mentioned in our discussions in the week leading up to this that it's important to say this medicine will make you feel better, and here's why. But is it also is it good, I guess, to be able to say, if you take the medicine, not only will it make you feel better, but we can do this. We can, get a toy. We can eat your favorite treat. Is that good incentive to provide too?
I think it kind of depends on the individual child and what you're wanting to do. Sometimes with kids, if you set them up with something where you say, if you do this, something wonderful will happen when you're done. I'll give you this wonderful thing. You're actually also telling the child a message, this has got to be pretty bad if I'm bringing out the bribes right away. So I think you respect your child, and I think kids themselves are respectful of their own lives and their own bodies. They want to feel better. So when you lay it out to them in a way that they understand already, they were the ones who complained to you that their ear hurt. So you can let them know, you said your ear hurt. We went to the doctor, and the doctor said this medicine is going to make it feel better. It's not going to make it feel better unless we can get it down into your tummy. That in and of itself should be the reinforcement. But you can make it in a way that makes them more fun, because we all have things we do that are a challenge in life, and we get reinforced for work. We get paid when we go to work. So I think that shouldn't be your first bet out. Try and first see if you can just encourage your child to do that. But also, too, maybe an incentive chart can be very helpful. And I think one of the things incentive charts do is not only do they reinforce your effort, but also, too, they show you the progress that's happened as you've been taking your medicine, how far along you are in that process. And I think you can feel a sense of accomplishment with that, too.
I think an incentive chart doesn't always have to be a big reward either, like a big tangible prize. It could be doing something fun with your family, or picking the movie that evening, or picking the dinner, or something. It doesn't have to be a materialistic item every time.
Yeah, and for some kids, just the chart itself.
Right. Or stickers.
Yeah.
Stickers were huge with me. Stickers are color forms. Does anybody remember color forms? Yes. Do they still make color forms?
A little bit. Or
are they now on an iPad? Everything's on an iPad these days.
Everything's on an iPad.
So there's no need for color forms. How important, it's important, routine is, but what's the earliest age typically that a child can adjust to routine if you're talking about med taking in the long term?
I don't think there's ever any time that's too early for that, because part of that piece of setting a routine is not just for your child, but you're setting a routine for yourself as well. So if you find a way and a comfortable way to do that, a chair in your house that you can sit the child in your lap and have everything you need right next to you, you know your house, you know your life, you know you. So, and also too, I notice it's a lot with parents. They know which parent maybe is in a better place to do that. Which one in that child at that particular time is listening to more directly. So when you start that routine yourself, for your infant, you're also starting a routine for them before they even remember it. Similar to, like, I think how it's encouraging to get kids to read. You read to a baby to get them to read. You start with a routine when they're an infant. They'll grow up not knowing anything different.
Tell me a little bit about what each of you do as child life specialists here at Children's. I'll say for our listeners, I've been at Children's for a little over a year, and anytime I've been involved in anything with child life, it's been a blast. And I don't want to put a blanket on it, but it seems like you guys are having some of the most fun at Children's. Is that true?
I don't think any of us would be in this job if we weren't having fun. I mean, we're all pretty much drawn to being with kids. Kids in themselves are intriguing and fun and interesting. We wouldn't be doing this if we weren't having fun. And I think for with working in child life in general, part of one of the biggest joys of this is problem solving these individual issues for kids and making that experience better for them. There is nothing more fun than seeing a child feel accomplished at something, at a new task they've learned.
How about you, Sam?
Yeah, I think we have one of the best jobs in the hospital because we get to partner with parents who know their kids best. So part of our role is to kind of partner together for what would be best for that family's child and empower the parents to be able to do some of that hard work.
That's very cool. Sarah?
Well, I was just going to say that I think a lot of times when I talk with parents or coach parents, a lot of times they already have the tools, they're already doing that, or they just need a little bit of reinforcement or encouragement.
Now, they kind of fall in the toddler range, but when you're dealing with preschoolers, what are some things that are important for med taking with them?
I think having that routine is really important. That helps kids kind of know what to anticipate and also gives them control. So if you have a set time that you're giving your child medicine each day, or if you put a time frame around it, that also shows that the medicine's just a little part of their day and it's going to be over soon. So for example, if you tell a child, okay, you're going to take your medicine in 5 minutes, or after the commercial break, you're going to take your medicine, that can also give them some control.
What about me? I've been accused of being a 7-year-old. So say I'm a 7-year-old, and I know what the medicine does. I know I don't feel very well, but I still am having a hard time deciding that I want to take it. It just, whether it's the taste or any other effects from it, I'm putting my foot down. I don't want to take it. What are you doing if a kid just flat out refuses?
I think acknowledging that maybe it's hard or they don't want to take it at that age if they can articulate it, acknowledging that, but then saying that this really isn't a choice, your body needs it. So we have to do this, so what can we do to make it better? Giving choices then when you can.
Okay.
And I think some of the language too, when you're offering a choice, like Sarah said, taking the medicine isn't a choice. So sometimes a parent may say, are you ready to take your medicine? And the kid's automatically going to say no. So offering a choice that is really a choice, for example, it's time to take your medicine, would you like to take it with juice or water, is a more appropriate choice.
That's true. That it's harder for them to disagree. I mean, you've moved past the actual med taking and it's into, okay, what do you want with it? And I see that you're presenting a much different option. I'll take the juice. How about what, and I have a hard time with this, having zero experience with it, but if the medicine is anything other than in pill or liquid form, and you have to have it taken by syringe, or you have to have it in another way, are there distraction methods to use? I know that I don't think that would necessarily conflict with the honesty part, but are there things you can do to maybe put on a program or hand the kid an iPad while administering? Are there things that people do like that?
I think the most important thing that a parent can do is just comfort their child. They can sing to them, they can hold them. Sometimes there's a way you can hold them that's helping them get their medicine, but still like a loving hug or supportive way for your children. Those are, I think, the best form of distraction to use right off the bat, just something talking to them. But I do think distraction like iPads, watching a video, something like that is also helpful for kids. And that, again, can be a choice that a child can have, where they can pick what their distraction's going to be.
If taste is the biggest hurdle, are there any go-tos to mix it with or take immediately after?
That's actually a really good question, and we were thinking about that as we were getting ready for this. And I honestly think the best thing to do first is check with your physician and your pharmacist to find out what the medicine can be mixed with and what it can and cannot be mixed with. Plus, lots of medicines need to be taken at time frames around food and around eating. And one of the things I noticed with my kids, usually when the time we went to the pharmacist to go pick something up and we wait in line to get that medicine, they always ask you at the drugstore, well, do you want to talk to the pharmacist? I usually said no, because I just wanted to get the heck out of there and get home. But I realize now really it's more helpful to stop and ask the pharmacist what suggestions do they have. They know what will mix well with that medicine. There's a lot of tricks you can do to help with that, with the taste of it. And that's another piece with giving your child back some control. So once you found out what type of thing can mix well or not mix well with the medicine, that's another piece your child can choose. And I think there are some things when you think about it that's helpful. If it's a treat they can have right before they get the medicine, take the medicine and then have the treat again right after. It can help mask the flavor, but it's also giving them control. And as they're sucking or eating, they're swallowing.
Now, prior to moving here, I lived in Duluth, and for the last year and a half before I came here, I lived with my grandfather, and he takes medicine, and but it was easy for him because he was home a lot. What are you doing when meds need to be taken on a schedule, and you're not always present with your child? Is it important to get teachers or staff involved or anyone else where this child would be? Maybe they're at sports at a certain time every day and you have to get a coach involved.
Because I have teens at home. I think that's one of the things that's the biggest challenge, and it has more to do maybe where developmentally you're at when you get a little bit older. Teens don't like to be different, and they don't like to have their schedule interrupted. So it's one of the things you might want to sit down when you actually get the medication prescribed to you with your physician. When and how does this need to be taken? And when you're having that conversation with your teen, they've heard that information too. They're also at an age where you want to get them to start being more responsible for their own health care. So you want to engage them now. How is this going to work for you? How will that work with your schedule? And have them actually sit down and figure it out. Do they have time to get to the nurse's office from second period to the nurse's office and back to their locker again? Is that going to work, or do they need to come up with a different plan? And I've always thought school nurses are good to connect with. This is not the first time they've ever had to help a child get their medication in when they're at school. And a school nurse will have good suggestions and maybe some influence to change a schedule if that's what needs to happen, or figure out a way that it's easier for the child during that day. They also might, again, it's always nice to throw out that net and get as many different ideas as you can, because you'll know what fits right with you and your child. And a school nurse is a good source.
Is there any concern about your child not taking the medicine when it is a situation like that where you aren't present for it? And maybe you're noticing that there are some side effects due to not taking it, and how do you intervene then?
I think that's the reality of parenting a teen. There's lots of things they're doing that you don't know necessarily what they are doing.
I can say I was always honest with my parents.
So I think with a teen, they're old enough, and this is another thing, a life skill set that you're teaching them. If you don't take the medication when you're sitting with the physician, what happens if you don't take it? Or if you take it irregularly, what's the result of that decision? So when a teen's sitting down and on hearing that, that's helpful. I also think it helps teens when you get to maybe depersonalize it just a little bit, create a contract. You will take your medicine these times, and this is the reasons why, and have them sign it on a piece of paper. It's another good life lesson to learn. But also, too, then that way, if you find out they aren't taking their medicine or you see a change in their health because of that, you can point to that. Remember, you made this commitment, you made the promise, this is your signature, you said you're going to take the medicine, and this is the repercussions for having not taken it. Because you want them to own it, that they want to do it simply for that's the right reason for their body. It's their body, it's their responsibility to take care of it.
Now, I was researching before the show, and I saw a great piece about blackberries making a great edible cup, and I thought, this is brilliant. I mean, if I knew that when I wasn't feeling well I could actually eat the cup, are there a lot of people doing this? Is this relatively new, or has this been around?
I think that actually it's one of those things where it's a good example of the creativity that's out there. When you reach out to your friends, family, people that you know, different sources, you can see again what fits right with your child. Now, me personally, if it was blackberries, I'd stick the heck away from it. I don't like blackberries.
So then, in that case, you'd be presented the choice. You can take your meds, or you could take blackberries.
Yeah, so I think it's one of those things where you're looking at all the possibilities and figuring out what works best for your child. Similar to like how when we're trying to teach kids how to take medicine that's in a pill form, that's another challenge that ends up happening when they get to be too old to take their medicine in a liquid form. That's something as a parent, even when you think about Tylenol, if they're just taking regular medication like that, it does get easier when they get to the point where they can take that in a pill. So it's a good skill set to help teach your child. And how we do it here in the hospital is we often will pair a hard candy like a Tic Tac or a Skittles, to the size of the medicine, so the kids can practice swallowing something that they know is candy that's a little easier to try first, so they find some success with that before we're expecting them to take the medicine that they've been prescribed. So it's a good skill set to teach all children, not even if you have one that has a prescription.
So for those keeping track at home, Blackberries is a distant third to the waffle cone bowl and the bread bowl for edibles. I did see now, and I can't remember who came out with it, but there's an edible coffee cup out there.
Oh, I saw that too. That sounds so good.
I want that, but it's important to finish the coffee before you start eating the cup, because that could lead to some lawsuits, I can imagine, with some of the burning. How about I never grew out of this. I like certain cups, and I have a giant Incredible Hulk cup that, despite my wife's protests, it has a special spot in the cupboard at home in the kitchen. Is it possible to take your child out and maybe pick a cup of some kind to have for his or her meds?
I think that's a great suggestion for a way to kind of make it more fun and to help the child, again, feel control. So when they know that they're going to have to take this medicine, you can take your child on a special shopping trip to pick out a special cup that they use just for taking their medicine. And with that, you can decide if you want to have the apple juice or the grape juice, again, after talking to the pharmacist to see what they can take it with. But that just offers another piece of control and also makes it a little bit fun and special, too.
How about when it comes to being a parent, when you are frustrated, maybe at your wit's end, what kind of reassurance can you give mom and dad that, look, we know it's a tough road, but remain patient?
I think this is just a good example of part of that's a challenge when you're parenting anyway. Take a breath. There's no perfect person, there's no perfect parent, and this is a really challenging thing to do. So universally challenging, it's one of the most common things we talk about with families. So when you're in a situation where it feels like nothing's working, recognize you're not the first person who's ever been here and you're not the last person. So take a deep breath. Give yourself a break. And when you're readjusting with your own frustration, you're also teaching your child how to cope with frustration in general. This isn't going how either of us wants it to do. Let's stop and take a break and think, how could we make this work better? Get your child be part of that problem solving and give yourself and your kid a break. This is a hard thing to do. It's going to take time to figure out what works best for you and your family.
Historically, is there a certain age that is more difficult than others for med taking, or again, is this totally case by case?
I think that toddler preschool age is a hard age for med taking because, again, their favorite word is no, and they developmentally, that's kind of what they're supposed to do is resist some of that. So.
Yeah, and I would add to that teens as well, just because they also have that magical thinking, I don't really need medicine. If I just didn't think about it, no one's noticing I'm not taking it, so why do I really have to take it? But also, too, I think there's a piece that's a personality style, too. So you may have one child that's an excellent medicine taker and another child in your family that's not. There's no right or wrong way to go about that. It's just maybe one child's more sensitive to something in their mouth, or another child might be more concerned about not having control or exactly what the medicine's doing. So like anything else you do in your parenting, you'll figure out what works best for each individual kid. But your children themselves, if you have more than one child, they can be hugely supportive of each other and role modeling for one another. So if you have one child who's a good medicine taker, that's easier to get the other kids to take medicine too.
And when it comes to, again, long-term can be a relative word. I mean, maybe it's not necessarily something you're taking for the rest of your life, but it might be for 6 weeks, or it might be for a month. If it is long-term in the sense of lifelong, I imagine routine would be crucial, just because then it would become second nature. But if you're dealing with either, off the top of my head, strep or some kind of infection that will require some medicine taking for the next handful of weeks, what kinds of things are important aside from routine?
One thing I think that's helpful for, especially for something like an infection, it's hard for, especially with kids that are a little bit older, once they start feeling better, then the commitment's not there as much to finish taking the medicine all the way to the end. So when you have a reinforcement chart or even a calendar or something you're clicking up the dates, they can see that the expectation is all the way until the end, every day until the end. And so that in of itself is reinforcing when they see how much work they've already done to help their body, but to remind them that they need to take the medicine all the way until the end.
One thing that I did was with my own children was I would have them help me remember what the last day was, even though I knew, but I would always have them like tell me how many days. We kind of did a countdown for when they would be done.
It seems like the overwhelming theme here is visualizing it, helping a child, no matter the age, visualize it, whether it's here's what it looks like when it's helping you, here's what it will look like when you're better, and here's what it looks like with us taking it, as far as the history of we've taken it this day and we're taking it to this day.
I think that's a really good point for all kids, and it's especially helpful too for kids that are have developmental issues that might have a harder time understanding the specifics of what you're doing or learn best through a visual way. All kids learn their own unique way, and some are just better visual learners. And when you lay it out in a way that makes it easier for them to understand it in the way they learn best, that's a great way to encourage the medicine taking. So it's a good time to pair up with the teacher too. If there's a way that your teacher is helping teach your child a concept, you can pair up with that same concept. So if they are learning better with visual cues, you can create visual cues for your child to understand too what the steps are for taking the medicine, as well as how long they're going to be taking it.
With this podcast, we'll also have a post on our Mighty blog that details a lot of the resources people can use and go to when dealing with the issue of med taking. But are there any things that you think off the top of your head parents should know, like, oh, here's a great source or resource to use?
I think there's a bunch of different resources, and I always click it onto the website number, so I don't exactly remember I just have the address. But there's a bunch of really great ones for making reinforcement charts. Luckily, that's an aspect of parenting. There are a lot of different sources, and we have a couple go-tos that we like to go to. But I also think it's fun making your own chart, coming up with your own ideas. So sometimes when you're looking at some of these resources, it's almost better as a way to jump off an idea for yourself. Well, I really like this idea, but she's super into turtles or something, and then you can recreate something that'll work out perfect for your child. We also, too, I think some of the research, the hospital's webpage itself, we have a couple of videos on the hospital's webpage that show giving medicines for both infants and toddlers, which is nice because then you can physically see a comforting, supportive way to hold your child and give them the medicine. I remember when my kids were little, one of the first tricks, it doesn't take too many times, but to realize it was much easier giving medicine where you're squirting instead of a spoon. They could bat away the spoon pretty easily, and that could get frustrating quick. But when you look at the videos online, too, I think it helps see physically how to do that.
Is there anything you'd like to tell parents who maybe aren't familiar with hospitals in general, or parents not familiar with hospitals, but maybe they're wondering, what is a child life specialist? How would you summarize what you and your colleagues do? Just kind of the way you fit into the children's hospital.
You know, it's funny you were asking that because I was just trying to think of a good way to shorten this as short as we can. And one of the things we're doing is we created little table tents to put out, so just giving people information. And the word empower was used. And usually I have a quick answer for that, like an elevator answer. But I think empower is the quickest answer for one word. Because part of what our job is empower both children and their families to cope as best as possible with the healthcare experience they're facing. And that'll be dependent on where they're at developmentally, what they're bringing to the page, what it is their need, and what they're asking for. So when you empower someone, you're giving them the opportunity to learn from this event and have a skill set that they can apply to others. And to me, that's the most satisfying part of our job, is when we get to see families and kids learn a new skill and apply it in another situation.
Sarah Magnuson, Jeri Kayser, Sam Schackman, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Well, it was wonderful to get a chance to be able to talk about an issue that's really commonly helpful for parents, I think.
Great. Thank you. And also, you guys can find us at childrensmn.org. We're also on Twitter at childrensmn. And like I always say with the rest of the world, we're on Facebook, and that's /childrensminnesota. And we also have the Mighty blog, which I mentioned, which you can find on our website, that has a lot of useful information for parents and teens and kids of all ages, and then you'll also see some great patient stories on there as well. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.